October 8th, 1899, an organizational meeting was held to develop a plan for a Unitarian church in Dallas. The meeting was held at the Oriental Hotel at Commerce and Akron. 14 people were present. They declared to hold services in the Odd Fellows Hall at Main and Austin. How appropriate was that? That is the celebration that we have today, October 8th, 1899. A week later, the first service was held, led by Daniel Limbaugh, who spoke on the need for liberal Christianity in the midst of the Orthodox Church. By December of that year, the first church was formally organized with 32 members. Services were held at Temple Emmanuel at 292 Commerce Street. On January 21st, 1900, Daniel Limbaugh was ordained and installed as our first minister. The Reverend George Leonard Cheney of Boston preached a sermon. September 11th, 1900, the Women's Alliance was formed. The president was Miss L.S. Thorne. The Women's Alliance would carry the church through the Depression as it was closed for many years. On the 24th of January, 1900, a year after they had formed, the charter was notarized. The purpose was the support of public worship. Our assets were $1,500. On June 4th of 1902, the first wedding was held in the church between Valerie Eisenlohr and Carl Helmley. The Women's Alliance gave the bride a dish for humble pudding. January 10, 1903, the church adopted a constitution and bylaws. The object of the church, said the Constitution, shall be to maintain regular services of Christian worship in this community and to upbuild the hearts of the people in the high ideals of a rational, progressive, and exalting religion in the love of God and the service of man. That is our jumping off place for today. Rational religion, progressive religion, exalting religion in the love of God and service of man. That is who we are today. The rational religion, said Limbaugh in 1899 when he preached that first sermon. He said, there are many in Dallas today, both inside and outside churches, who are hungering and thirsting for religion, whose lives will be wrecked religiously if they cannot find one which is rational. In the language of the sainted and prophetic soul of Channing, he said, our ultimate reliance is and must always be on our reason. I am sure that my rational nature is from God, than that any book is an expression of his will. He said, freedom of inquiry, whose findings are referred to the reason as a final court of appeal, is sure of resulting in harmony of thought and religious sentiments among the inquirers and worshipers than when investigation and belief is bounded by a creed. You see, we have never been a church bounded by a creed, demanding a belief in one thing or another. We have always asked for a place, a reason to guide us, to hold us in free inquiry and learning. We have also always had a spiritual lens, and this are the two sides of the balance in our faith in this church. Limbaugh, from that foundational sermon, pointed to the spiritual. He said, number one, we are here. And number two, we are here because of a power outside and beyond us. This power has given us life and is therefore, whatever more it may be, our Father, he said. Out of it have come not only our bodies, but our minds, our affectional natures, our consciousness, whatever we mean when we think of ourselves as souls. This power has produced the fields, the beasts, the lowest and the highest types of humanity, brains like that of Shakespeare, and spiritual natures like that of Jesus. He pointed to the foundation of our church as reason and spirituality. That we are not here by our own making. We are here by being part of something much bigger. And that thing is continually revealed. And it is not found in one person like Jesus. It is ultimately found in love. The amazing thing about reading back through these foundational sermons, and there are actually many that I have combed through, is that they are so much of who we are today. They're infused with this rational and spiritual nature that we inhibit today. Daniel Limbaugh said things like, "Now the most important feature of this discussion in this connection is that the gravest consideration of us all is, what shall I do with my life? And how can I make the most of it?" Have you heard that in a sermon in the last 10 years? And things like, "We believe then there is something essentially good and pure in human nature, and we everywhere appeal in our teachings to this, our higher nature, to assert itself by living the better life. Man may be free moral agents and morally responsible. God has arranged a moral universe in such a way that man may do wrong if he chooses." Have you heard sermons about our essential nature? The uncanny coherence of our founding, of our people who met here in Dallas 120 years ago, with who we are, meets in many streams, tranquil streams, as Reverend Ham put it. But I think it points to one thing, that we are strong because we have grown from the root of a tree that has served the people of our city. And we have chosen to live from their hopes into ours. Certainly this means we have also changed. That time in Dallas in 1900 was a different time than it is today. There was a small growing city. There were 82,726 residents in 1900. That's less than attended the UT football game this week. The city was on the verge of racism and a hateful climate in 1900. Early in the 1900s, a Catholic, a Baptist, a Presbyterian, a Methodist, a Jewish, and a Unitarian minister came together for the first all-city Thanksgiving service to combat the forces of hate that were elevating around racial divisions in the city of Dallas, and to push back on fundamentalist, literalist Christianity. We may have had members in this church who were more racist than the least racist person in this church today, I'm guessing. We may have had people who would seem like fundamentalists to us today, living in our pews then. Surely we have changed, but we evolved from a strong root. And from that root, we lived through the Depression with the help of the Women's Alliance, through world wars. We know one member of our church died in World War II, Charles Martin, an Air Force pilot who was killed in a crash in India. They have lived through the first and original ineptitude of our government, Warren Harding's administration, in which Warren Harding ran on the platform America First. And we have lived through impeachments. We have lived through integration. We have held SNCC meetings in our church. We had FBI agents following members of our church during civil rights. We had the JFK assassination, where when it was announced from this pulpit that Lee Harvey Oswald had shot the president, a member of our choir stood up and ran out because he had rented an apartment in Oak Cliff to Lee Harvey Oswald. We have worked to integrate the church. We believe we are the first church to to integrate in 1945. We worked for the integration of schools. Long after Brown versus the Board of Education, we worked hard to get the Dallas schools to integrate, which happened in the 70s. We worked for fair housing, once co-owning with other Unitarian church a Section 8 property. We worked for women. Ministers of this church drove women to boats that went off into the Gulf of Mexico where they could get legal abortions in the 60s. It was called the Clergy Consulting Service. And women of our church led the way with Planned Parenthood of North Texas to found the Roe v. Wade case, and so much more. In the 80s, we had a banner that said, "Our church has AIDS," and so many people died. And in the early 2000s, we had a banner that said, "Civil marriage is a civil right," to which we got a call from the city. No other banner have we ever received a call from the city where they said, "You know, you can't leave a banner up more than 2 weeks. Civil marriage is a civil right." This was in the mid-2000s. And this church has had characters. The list is long. I can't go through all of them, from business leaders to socialist reformers. Some of the highlights are George Jelinek, once called the founder of Texas Insurance and a member of our church, who just before the church was formed was reported in the newspaper as having had a scuffle in San Antonio with an enemy where he hit the man with a stick and was fired upon by a gun. No one was injured, but their pride was hurt. And George Clifton Edwards, who started the Dallas Park System in 1901, supported allowing women to vote, started a private school for textile workers and their families, and agreed to represent Alan Brooks, a black man charged with injuring a child who was hanged by a mob before Edwards could do anything for him. Edwards ran as mayor of the city of Dallas as a socialist in favor of more rights for African Americans and women. There was a strong socialist strain that ran through this church all through the 20th century. And there was Carl Brannon, an agitator in Dallas for workers' rights and nuclear disarmament and civil liberties and against political corruption and sexual freedom. In one interview, he said amusingly he was jailed only once. He says, "It was a garment workers' strike. I was arrested for obstructing traffic. The traffic was a 300-pound policeman who stood in front of me while I stood in the picket line." And then there were the characters that I have known in the last 18 years. Louise Raggio, the Texas tornado, the first female lawyer in Texas who learned that married women in Texas had limited property rights and couldn't take out bank loans or start their own businesses without their husband's approval. One of her quotes in her book, The Texas Tornado, says, "When a man and a woman got married, they were one, and he was the one." Louise fought for women's rights, the Marital Property Act of 1967, which changed some of those restrictions. She was known to say, "Don't concentrate on what you don't have. Concentrate on your assets, on your strengths, instead of your disabilities. And always be practical," she warned the young women who came to her for advice. And this is apropos. "Never think you have made it. There are plenty battles to be won ahead." In a letter to the minister in 1986, Louise Raggio wrote, "Being the first woman board member of the Texas Bar Foundation and the first and only Unitarian in a position of leadership at the bar, I think that is called a double minority." And there was Albert Half of Half Construction, who lived large ideas ignited by his imagination. He had ideas so large that he believed and created a plan to move Hong Kong. He was the site planner of the super collider, superconductor that never happened. He met with city officials to plan things like White Rock Lakes, drainage in Bachman Lake. He wrote in a Christmas letter once that he shared with me before he died, year after his wife died. He said, Mama Lee believed that the world's hopes are reborn again and again, and that love will eventually transform the world. I believe that Albert Half had that same idea, that joy and love were the characteristics of his God, which he found here, affirmed in our church. So many other characters. Hardy Sanders, who wrote us all letters of complaint and encouragement. And when he died, we realized he wrote everyone letters, even while running a giant company in Colleyville. Ned Fritz, who led the environmental movement in this city, who said to me late in his life, overpopulation is not the problem. And Joe Boatwright, who climbed into that piano and plucked at the strings, who was our music director for a while. I have known pilots of presidents and actors and rock musicians, and I have only been here since 2001. But what really has made this place thrive is not these characters, but everyone who has invested to make this our spiritual home. Those who cared for our children, those who governed and built buildings and envisioned a future and hired and called ministers and, yes, preached a theology of love and reason and deep commitments to human goodness, justice, and compassion. I count myself blessed among the line of ministers that we represent today who were called to serve, some successful and some not successful, but all tended to the heart of this congregation. A member of our church said to me this week, "You're doing a great job, Daniel. But remember, you stand on the shoulders of so many like Laurel Holman and John Burns and Dwight Brown and Robert Rabel." And I humbly agree. It's why I spend so much time reading through Rabel's sermons from 42 to 64, in which I found this quote. He said, "We build the church because we want to grow and mature with things of the Spirit, because we want to possess the values, human and divine, which this church can inculcate in us and in our children. No other institution on the face of the earth can possibly do this for us. Nothing else that you can possibly buy, no other investment that you can make will ever repay you one iota of the satisfaction or any such commensurate return as this church will be, refunding to you daily in the deep things of the Spirit, which it awakens and keeps alive in you, and also in its ability to serve your needs at the times of crisis in your life." Once Larry Clayman, a member here now deceased, said, "The Rabel years were the golden years." And then he turned to Laurel and to me, my predecessor, and he said, "The Holman Kanter years are also the golden years." To which I say, we are getting better, and maybe the Holman, Kanter, White, Dana years are the platinum years. We are getting better because of you. Your part in this, your part in our growth and our impact, in helping us live out our values every day. Every day that you see the God of love exists in your life. Every day you don't put down your values or hide them when someone wants you to believe that people are corrupt sinners. Every day you use your heart and your mind to be religious representatives of this church, a church that stands for justice and compassion. Every day that you don't let people get away with racist comments or degrading women or making enemies of people that they have never met. Every day you support this place, this oak tree planted in the heart of our community that bristles with love and strength. Every day, those things happen. You make our community better. You care for someone with a loving, mindful heart, knowing that life is holy and we are expressed parts of the divine. That's what we're doing here. And that's what they did here 120 years ago, and 52 years ago, and 20 years ago, and 10 years ago, and today. Living with rational religion of the heart and the mind to make the world a better place. And it's you who do this, not me, not Aaron, not Beth. It's you. You move us forward through the ages in unbroken line. You who are the faithful spirits with gifts of differing measure, but hearts of one accord, who respond to a divine call to expand the realm of love and light and God's purpose. You are the ones who push us into the future. And yes, it is ironic that this hymn that we are about to sing is the tune of Onward Christian Soldiers. But that is the beauty in this place of our faith, that we grow, we evolve, we seek the way forward without losing the root of our cause by adapting to the new ways of being each day. 120 years from today, let them look back on us with thanks for our vision and our commitment to a hope for humanity that few religious communities can claim. Forward through the ages, my friends. Amen and amen. And let's sing hymn number 114.